They mocked her tiny inheritance, a worthless, collapsing farm, until she found the hidden safe beneath the barn floor. But what was inside wasn't just money. It was a choice that would redefine her life and her grandmother's legacy. If you've ever felt like the world has already decided who you are, then this story is for you. Stick around, and maybe share your own story in the comments below. I promise I'll be reading. The air in the office of the county services building always smelled the same. Weak coffee, disinfectant, and the quiet desperation of paperwork that was 20 years out of date. It was the smell of my entire life up to that point. I sat on a plastic chair that stuck to the back of my legs, my hands clutching a single cardboard box that held everything I owned. A few worn paperbacks, a change of clothes, a faded photo of a woman I barely remembered, and a certificate that said I, Alara Vance, was now officially 18. An adult. Free. It felt more like being untethered, cut loose in the middle of a cold, gray ocean. Mrs. Gable, my caseworker for the last 6 years, slid a thin manila folder across the desk. Her smile was practiced, a weary little twitch of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. Well, Alara, this is it. You've officially aged out. Congratulations. The word felt hollow, like a stone dropped down an empty well. Congratulations for surviving, for making it to the legal threshold where the system could wash its hands of me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My throat felt tight, a knot of fear and something else, something that felt dangerously like grief for a life I never had. Now, she continued, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the folder. As we discussed, your grandmother, Maeve Vance, her estate was finally settled. The process was complicated. She said the word complicated, with the same tone someone might use for unpleasant smell. There isn't much, I'm sorry to say. After the debts and liens were accounted for, there's just the property itself. She pushed a single, blurry photograph across the desk. It showed a sagging farmhouse, its porch slanted like a broken jaw. Behind it, the dark shape of a barn listed to one side, as if tired of standing. The trees around it were bare, their branches clawing at a washed-out sky. It looked less like a home and more like a ghost. It's in a place called Sparrow Creek, she said. Quite rural. Over 4 hours from here, she paused, her gaze flicking from my face to the box on my lap. Frankly, Alara, the property is a liability. The back taxes alone are substantial. There is, however, a standing offer from a development group, Northwood Holdings. They've been acquiring land in that valley for a new resort project. She slid another paper toward me. It was a formal offer, dense with legal text. I saw a number, $5,000. They'll assume all the debt and give you this amount for signing it over. Mr. Davies, the estate lawyer, recommends you take it. It would give you a small cushion to get on your feet. Find an apartment, a job. It sounded so reasonable, so logical. $5,000 felt like a fortune, but the idea of signing away the only thing that had ever been mine, a piece of land connected to a name I shared, felt like a final amputation. My grandmother. I barely remembered her. A vague impression of a warm lap, the scent of soil and lavender, a low, humming voice. She'd put me into the system when I was 5. The official story was that she was unable to care for me. Unfit. The word had been stamped on my file, a brand I carried through a dozen foster homes. Abandoned. Now, her ghost was offering me a pile of rotting wood and $5,000. It felt like an insult layered on top of an injury. I want to see it, I said. The words came out quiet, but firm. Mrs. Gable blinked, surprised. Alara, there's no point. It's condemned. The lawyer said it's not habitable. It would be a long trip for nothing. I want to see it, I repeated. My voice was stronger this time. For 18 years, my life had been a series of rooms I hadn't chosen, decisions made by people who looked at me and saw a file number. This was the first real choice I had, and I wasn't going to let it be made for me in a sterile office that smelled of bleach. She sighed, the sound of a closing door. Very well. Mr. Davies's office is downtown. He has the keys and the final paperwork. He's expecting you. Just be realistic, Alara. The world is hard enough without holding on to things that are broken. I stood up, the cardboard box feeling heavier than it had a moment before. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. She gave me that tired smile again. Good luck, Elara. The meeting with Mr. Davies was even more disheartening. His office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower, a place that made me feel small and out of place in my worn jeans and faded hoodie. He was a man made of sharp angles and soft, apologetic tones. He had a kind face, but his eyes held the same pragmatic pity as Mrs. Gable's. He laid out the situation with a calm, methodical sadness. The farm was deeply in debt. The liens against it were held by a series of investment companies, all of which, he noted with a slight frown, seemed to trace back to Northwood Holdings. The taxes hadn't been paid in 3 years. The structures were unsafe. The offer on the table was, in his professional opinion, a gift. Your grandmother was a very determined woman, he said, choosing his words carefully. She fought to keep that land for years. But in the end, the financial realities became overwhelming. He slid a pen and a document across his vast mahogany desk. Sign here, Elara. Take the money. It's the smart play. It's what she would have wanted, what she would have wanted. How could he possibly know? How could anyone? She was a ghost to me, a question mark at the center of my life. Was she the unfit woman from my file, or the determined fighter he described? The two images didn't fit. I looked at the signature line, my name typed neatly beneath it, Elara Vance. For so long, that name had meant nothing. It was just a label. But on that paper, tied to a piece of land, it felt like something more. Felt real. I need to see it first, I told him, pushing the paper back. He looked disappointed but not surprised. He leaned back in his leather chair, a faint squeak of protest in the silent room. The keys are in this envelope, he said, sliding it over, along with a bus schedule and a hand-drawn map your grandmother left in her files. The bus will get you to the town of Sparrow Creek. From there, it's a 2-mile walk. There's no cell service out there, Elara. Be careful, he paused, his expression softening for a moment. Call me when you've made your decision. The offer from Northwood stands for another 30 days. I took the envelope. Inside were 2 old, iron keys, heavy and ornate, and a piece of faded notebook paper with a map drawn in a shaky but clear hand. The weight of the keys in my palm felt significant, like an anchor in the shifting tides of my life. As I left the building, the city felt louder, more abrasive than ever. The $5,000 felt like a bribe to forget, to move on, to become another anonymous face in the crowd. But the keys in my pocket felt like a promise. A question. I walked to the bus station, the cardboard box under one arm, the envelope clutched in my hand. I didn't know what I was looking for in Sparrow Creek. Maybe I was just going to see the final resting place of a dream. Or maybe, just maybe, I was going to find the beginning of one. The bus ride was a slow transition from concrete to green. The city's gray towers gave way to sprawling suburbs, then to flat, open farmland, and finally, to the rolling hills and dense forests of the valley. The air that hissed from the vents above my head started to smell less of exhaust and more of damp earth and pine. I was the only one who got off at Sparrow Creek. The town wasn't much more than a wide spot in the road. A general store with a rusted tin roof, a post office, a gas station with a single pump, and a handful of houses. The silence was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't empty. It was a living quiet, filled with the hum of insects and the whisper of wind in the tall pines that lined the road. Following the faded map, I started to walk. The road was paved for the first mile, then turned to gravel. My cheap sneakers crunched with each step, the sound loud in the stillness. The box was awkward and heavy, and sweat trickled down my back despite the cool air. No cars passed me. I felt like the only person on Earth. The map said to look for a broken stone wall and a mailbox with a painted bird on it. After what felt like an eternity, I saw it. The wall was crumbling, choked with ivy. The mailbox was tilted on its post. The painted bluebird faded and peeling. One of its wings chipped away. The name Vance was barely legible beneath it. A dirt driveway, more like 2 ruts in the grass, curved away into a thick stand of trees. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I took a deep breath and turned onto the path. The trees opened up after a few hundred yards, and I saw it. The photograph hadn't done it justice. It was worse. The farmhouse sagged in the middle, its spine broken. The windows were dark, vacant eyes, some of them shattered. The porch steps were gone, replaced by a pile of rotting planks. The barn stood behind it, a great, gray skeleton, its roof patched with mismatched pieces of metal and tar. The whole place seemed to be slowly sinking back into the earth, claimed by weeds and time. I stood there for a long time, the weight of the box in my arms mirroring the weight in my chest. Mrs. Gable was right. Mr. Davies was right. This wasn't a home. It was a ruin, a monument to failure. My failure. My grandmother's failure. It was the physical embodiment of the word. Unfit, a wave of despair washed over me, so strong it almost buckled my knees. I should turn around, walk back to town, catch the next bus, and sign the papers. Take the money and run. But something held me there. The silence, maybe, or the way the late afternoon light caught the wild roses climbing up the side of the porch, their pink blossoms a defiant splash of color against the decay. I walked closer, my feet sinking into the overgrown lawn. One of the iron keys fit the lock on the front door. It turned with a groan of protest, the sound of metal grinding against rust. The door swung inward on a single, shrieking hinge. The smell that hit me was thick and musty. Dust, damp, and the faint, sweet scent of decay. But underneath it all, there was something else. Faint but there. Lavender. The inside was a disaster. Furniture was covered in white sheets, like a congregation of ghosts. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light slanting through the grimy windows. Wallpaper peeled from the walls in long, curling strips. In the center of the living room, a section of the ceiling had collapsed, leaving a pile of plaster and splintered lath on the floor. It was hopeless, utterly hopeless. I dropped my box on a sheet-covered sofa, sending up a cloud of dust. I explored the small house like a tomb raider. A tiny kitchen with a rusted sink. A small bedroom with a bare mattress stained with water spots. A bathroom where the mirror had cracked, splitting my reflection into a dozen fractured pieces. Everything spoke of poverty and neglect. But as I moved through the silent rooms, I started to see other things, too. In the kitchen, a row of empty glass jars sat on a shelf, each one with a neat, handwritten label. Tomato, August 17. Peach preserves, September 18. On the wall in the bedroom, faint pencil marks charted a child's growth. My growth? Beside them, a single nail where a picture must have hung. In a drawer of a rickety nightstand, I found a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. The pages soft as cloth, the margins filled with notes in a familiar, shaky hand. The same hand that had drawn the map. It was hers. It was Maeve's. These small signs of a life lived here, of care and effort, felt completely at odds with the story of abandonment I'd been told. They were like sparks of warmth in the cold, damp air. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, sweeping away the worst of the plaster and dust, opening windows to let the fresh air chase out the stale smell of years. I found a broom in a closet, its bristles worn to nubs. As I worked, a strange feeling began to settle over me. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was something quieter, a sense of place. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a guest in someone else's house, a temporary resident waiting for the next move. This broken, forgotten place was mine. The sun began to set, painting the dusty windows in shades of orange and purple. I found a stack of old blankets in a chest, musty but dry. I made a bed on the ghost sofa and lay down as darkness fell, listening to the house settle around me. It was filled with sounds. The creak of wood, the skittering of a mouse in the walls, the sigh of the wind through the broken panes. I should have been terrified. I was alone, miles from anyone, with no phone and no electricity. But I wasn't. I felt held. That night, I dreamed of a low, humming voice and the scent of lavender. The next morning, I woke up stiff and cold but with a new sense of resolve. I wasn't ready to sign anything. I needed to understand this place. I needed to understand her. I decided to tackle the barn. It looked even more intimidating in the daylight. It was huge, far bigger than the house, with a high, vaulted roof that was full of holes. Pigeons cooed from the rafters, their droppings covering everything in a chalky white layer. The main floor was a cluttered maze of old farm equipment, rusted tools, and stacks of rotting lumber. It smelled of hay, oil, and time. I spent hours just clearing a path, dragging heavy, rusted objects out into the sunlight. My muscles ached and my hands were raw. It was mindless, physical work, and it felt good. It was a way to fight back against the decay, to impose some small order on the chaos. It was in the back corner, behind a stack of moldy hay bales, that I found it. The floorboards there were darker than the rest, stained with old oil or water. As I heaved another bale out of the way, my foot caught on the edge of one of the boards. It shifted, lifting slightly. Curiosity piqued. I knelt down. The board was loose. I worked my fingers into the gap and pulled. Came up with a soft splintering sound. Beneath it was not dirt, but a dark, hollow space. And in that space, nestled in the cool, dark earth, was a heavy metal box. It was an old military-style ammo can, painted dark green, with a sturdy latch on the front. It wasn't locked. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. This felt important. This felt like a secret. With trembling hands, I lifted the heavy can out of the hole and set it on the floor. I wiped the dirt from the lid and flipped the latch. It opened with a solid, satisfying clank. I lifted the lid. Inside, there was no treasure, no gold, no stacks of money. There was only a thick stack of envelopes, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. And on top of them, a single, heavy, ornate iron key. It was the twin to the ones Mr. Davies had given me. I gently lifted the bundle of letters out. There were dozens of them. They were addressed to me. To Alara. The date on the top one was from just a few weeks after I'd been taken away. The last one was dated less than a year ago. A lifetime of letters, never sent. My hands were shaking as I untied the ribbon. I pulled the first letter from its envelope. The paper was thin, almost translucent with age. The handwriting was the same as on the map, the same as in the book, but stronger, more fluid. "My dearest Alara," it began. "My little sparrow. If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and you have come home. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive an old woman for the choices she had to make. Nothing is as it seems." I sat there on the dusty floor of the collapsing barn, the cool air raising goosebumps on my arms, and I began to read. The letters told a story that shattered the simple, cruel narrative I had lived with my entire life. She hadn't abandoned me. She had been trying to save me. My grandmother, Maeve, was not unfit. She was a fighter. The valley, she explained, had been home to small, independent farmers for generations. But 10 years ago, Northwood Holdings had arrived. They started quietly, buying up land from families who were struggling. Their offers were low, but for people buried in debt, they were a lifeline. But for those who refused to sell, like Maeve, their tactics became more aggressive. "They use debt as a weapon, Alara," she wrote in a letter from my 7th birthday. "They buy the local farm loans from the banks. They lobby the county to reassess property taxes, tripling them overnight. They file frivolous lawsuits for imagined boundary disputes. They bleed you dry, one paper cut at a time, until you have no choice but to surrender." Maeve had organized her neighbors. They'd fought back. They'd pooled their money for lawyers. They'd protested at the county seat. But Northwood had deeper pockets. They had politicians in their pay. One by one, the other families gave in, worn down, bankrupt, and broken. Soon, only Maeve was left. Her farm was the centerpiece of their planned development, the future site of a luxury golf course. "They started to get uglier then," she wrote. "Threats. A fence cut, letting the cows out onto the highway. A dead animal left on the porch. Small things impossible to prove, designed to terrorize. I wasn't scared for myself, but I was terrified for you. You were only 5. What kind of life would it be, growing up in the middle of a war, watching your grandmother looking over her shoulder every minute of the day? I couldn't let them use you to get to me." The decision, she explained, had broken her heart. She'd made a choice that felt like tearing herself in two. To protect me, she had to let me go. She deliberately manufactured the unfit narrative. She stopped paying certain bills. She missed appointments with social services. She made herself look unstable, neglectful. It was a performance, a desperate, painful act of love designed to get me into the safety of the system, far away from the valley and the reach of Northwood. They thought they had won, she wrote. They thought with you gone I would crumble. And I almost did. The silence in this house, Alara, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard. But every time I thought of your face, I found the strength to keep fighting. Not for me, for you. I had to make sure you had something to come home to. The letters detailed her lonely, decade-long war. She'd become a quiet archivist of Northwood's crimes. She documented everything. The threats, the illegal dumping of construction waste on a neighbor's fallow field, the backroom deals with county commissioners. She gathered affidavits from other farmers who had been cheated. She made the farm look worthless, taking on strategic debt from Northwood's own shell companies, knowing they would rather hold the debt and wait her out than risk a messy eviction that might draw public attention. She was playing a long game, a war of attrition. The last letter was different. The handwriting was weaker, the lines unsteady. My dearest Alara, it read. The doctors tell me I don't have much time left. I fought as long as I could. I'm so sorry I couldn't win this for you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to watch you grow up. Every day I've imagined you. Your smile, your laugh. I hope you've been happy. I hope you've been safe. That's all I ever wanted. Now this place is yours. The choice is yours too. Northwood will come for it. They will offer you money. You can take it, and I will not blame you. You deserve a fresh start, a life free of this fight. It's more than I ever had. But if you have any of my stubborn blood in you, if you feel that this place, this land, is worth fighting for, then I have left you a weapon. The key in the box is not for the house. Go back to where you found this box. Look deeper. There is another floor, a false bottom to the hole. Beneath it is a safe. My real legacy is in there. It's not money, little sparrow. It's the truth. The truth is heavier than gold and much harder to spend. Whatever you choose, know that I have loved you every second of every day. I am proud of you, always. Your grandma. Maeve. I sat there, paralyzed. The letters spread around me on the dusty floor. Tears streamed down my face, silent and hot. I cried for the little girl who believed she was abandoned. I cried for the grandmother I never knew, a woman of impossible strength and sacrifice. I cried for the years we had lost. The story of my life had been a lie. Not a malicious lie, but a protective one. A shield built from a grandmother's broken heart. The anger came next, a white-hot rage that burned away the grief. Anger at Northwood. Anger at the system that had let this happen. Anger at their casual cruelty and greed. They hadn't just taken land. They had stolen my family. For a long time, I just sat, the setting sun casting long shadows through the barn door. The air grew cold, but I didn't feel it. A resolve was hardening inside me, solidifying from the molten mess of my emotions. The choice wasn't a choice at all. How could I take their blood money, the price of my grandmother's suffering? How could I let them pave over her memory and build their sterile resort on her ashes? Couldn't. I wouldn't. I went back to the hole in the floor. My hands were steady now. I reached deep into the space where the box had been. My fingers brushed against wood. It was another board, set deeper into the earth. I found the edge and pulled. It was heavy, but it lifted, revealing a dark, square shape set into the concrete beneath. A floor safe. The key, Maeve's key, slid into the lock, turned with a smooth, oiled click. I lifted the heavy steel door. Inside, there was no dust, no damp. It was perfectly organized. There were small cassette tapes, each labeled with a date and a name. There were binders filled with documents. Copies of fraudulent land transfers, financial statements from shell corporations, sworn affidavits from other families Northwood had ruined. There was a detailed ledger, written in Maeve's neat hand, tracking payments from Northwood's parent company to a local county commissioner. And at the very bottom, There was a thick, sealed envelope. Inside was $10,000 in cash in crisp $100 bills. Tucked into the stack was a final, small note. For the fight and the property taxes. Make them pay Alara. This was her legacy. Not a worthless farm. Not a pile of debt. It was a meticulously crafted case. An arsenal. My inheritance wasn't the land. It was the means to defend it. The next morning, I walked the 2 miles back to town. The general store had a payphone on the outside wall, mounted to the peeling paint. I fed it a pocketful of quarters, the sound of the coins dropping echoing in the quiet morning. I dialed the number for Mr. Davies's office from memory. His secretary put me through immediately. "Alara," he said, his voice warm but professional. "Have you had a chance to consider the offer? I've had another call from Northwood's attorneys. They're getting impatient. I've made a decision," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I'm not selling." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could picture him in his high-backed leather chair, looking out over the city, surprised. "Alara, we've been over this. The property is untenable. The debts are fraudulent." I cut in. "The whole thing is a scam. My grandmother has been fighting Northwood Holdings for a decade, and she left me the proof." I heard him take a slow, deep breath. "That's a very serious accusation. I have documents. I have recorded conversations. I have a ledger of payments to a county commissioner. I have everything. She spent the last 10 years of her life building a case against them. She didn't leave me a liability, Mr. Davies. She left me a weapon, and I'm going to use it." For a long moment, there was only the faint hiss of the line. I wondered if he would dismiss me, tell me I was a grieving, emotional kid who didn't understand the real world. I wondered if he was already on their side. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. The soft, apologetic tone was gone. In its place was something else. Something sharp. Something interested. "Where are you right now?" he asked. "In Sparrow Creek. At the general store." "Don't talk to anyone about this," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Don't show those documents to anyone. I'm coming to you. I'll be there this afternoon. Just stay put." "And Alara?" "Yes. Don't lose that evidence." He hung up. I stood by the payphone for a minute, the receiver still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. The world felt like it had shifted on its axis. I was no longer a victim of my circumstances. I was a participant. I was Maeve Vance's granddaughter. I walked back to the farm, my steps lighter than they had been before. The sagging house didn't look like a ruin anymore. It looked like a fortress. The overgrown fields didn't look neglected. They looked defiant. This wasn't just a piece of land. It was a battlefield. And the battle was just beginning. And as I walked down that gravel road, I had a thought. A lot of us are handed stories about ourselves. Stories told by other people. That we're not good enough, not smart enough, that we come from the wrong place, that we're broken. And sometimes we start to believe them. If you're here listening to this, maybe you've felt that way too. Maybe you've been handed a story that doesn't fit who you are. I want you to know that you have the power to write a new one. It's not easy. It takes courage. But it's possible. If this is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button and become part of this community. We're all just trying to find our own truth, and we don't have to do it alone. Mr. Davies arrived in a cloud of dust in a sensible sedan that looked completely out of place on the rutted driveway. He got out of the car, dressed in a crisp suit, and looked around at the property, his expression unreadable. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. He wasn't looking at a file number anymore. He was looking at a client. I took him to the barn. I had laid everything out on a clean sheet on the floor. The binders, the tapes, the ledger. He knelt, his expensive suit pants creasing in the dust, and began to go through it, page by page. He was silent for over an hour. The only sounds were the rustle of paper and the cooing of the pigeons in the rafters. He read with an intense, focused concentration. He held the documents up to the light, studied the signatures, examined the dates. I watched him, my stomach in knots. Everything depended on his reaction. Finally, he looked up at me, his eyes wide. My God, he whispered. She did it. The old fox. She actually did it. He shook his head in disbelief. I represented Maeve for years. She would come into my office with these wild stories about conspiracy and corruption. I'll be honest, I thought she was eccentric, a grieving woman tilting at windmills. I humored her. I filed the motions she asked for, but I never truly believed her. I advised her to settle, to sell, to give up. He looked down at the evidence spread before him, then back at me. A look of profound regret crossed his face. I was wrong. This isn't just a case, Alara. This is a criminal conspiracy. Racketeering, fraud, bribery. It's all here. He stood up, brushing the dust from his knees. He was a different man from the one I'd met in the city. He was energized, his eyes sharp with a lawyer's righteous anger. They're not just going to lose the farm, he said, a grim smile on his face. Some people are going to go to prison. That was the beginning of the war. It wasn't a quick or easy victory. Northwood Holdings didn't just roll over. They had a team of high-priced lawyers who fought us at every turn. They filed countersuits. They tried to paint my grandmother as a delusional old woman and me as an opportunistic teenager looking for a payout. They sent men in suits to the farm, men who parked at the end of the driveway and just watched me. They were trying to intimidate me, to scare me into backing down, just like they had with Maeve. But they didn't understand. I wasn't alone in that house. I had my grandmother's letters. I had her courage. And now I had Mr. Davies. He fought for me with a zeal that was personal. He was atoning for his own disbelief, making up for the years he had dismissed Maeve's pleas. While the legal battle raged in courtrooms hours away, my battle was at the farm. I used the $10,000 Maeve had left me. First, I paid the back taxes, officially taking the property out of immediate danger. Then I started the work. I bought tools and lumber at the general store in town. The owner, a grizzled man named Hank, looked me over with suspicion at first. Another city kid playing pioneer. But as I came back, day after day, my hands getting more calloused, my clothes covered in dirt and paint, his expression softened. One day, as he was loading bags of concrete mix into the back of my rusty, second-hand truck, he grunted, "You're Maeve's girl, ain't ya?" "You got her chin." I just nodded. "She was a tough old bird," he said, slamming the tailgate shut. "Glad to see someone's finally fighting back." From then on, things started to change. Small things. An extra bag of nails would appear in my order with a wink from Hank. A local woman, Sarah, who ran a small diner, started leaving a hot casserole on my porch in the evenings. A retired carpenter named George showed up one Saturday morning, unannounced, with his toolbox. "Heard you were trying to fix that porch," he said, not meeting my eye. "Figured you were doing it all wrong." He stayed all day, showing me how to measure twice and cut once, how to set posts so they wouldn't rot. He never asked for a thing. He just said, "Maeve helped my wife out once when we were in a tight spot. 'Bout time someone paid it forward." I was no longer just the girl who inherited the Vance place. I was becoming part of Sparrow Creek. I was Maeve's granddaughter. I was one of them. The work on the house was slow and hard. I started with the roof, patching the holes to stop the leaks. I learned how to repair plaster walls, how to glaze a window, how to sand a floor until the beautiful old wood shone through. Every repaired board, every new pane of glass, felt like a victory. I was not just fixing a house. I was healing it. I was bringing it back to life just as it was doing for me. I found my grandmother everywhere. In the garden, where her perennial herbs still pushed their way through the weeds each spring. In the scent of the wild roses that climbed the new porch trellis I'd built. In the way the morning light filled the kitchen. I cleared out her bedroom and made it my own, but I kept her copy of To Kill a Mockingbird on the nightstand. Sometimes, late at night, I would read her letters again, not with grief, but with a deep, abiding gratitude. She had given me more than a home. She had given me a purpose. She had given me back my own story. The legal fight took almost 2 years. It culminated in a state investigation. The evidence Maeve had collected was undeniable. The tapes, the ledger, the documents, it was a perfect road map of their corruption. The county commissioner resigned in disgrace and was later indicted. Northwood Holdings was hit with massive fines and a class action lawsuit from all the other families they had swindled out of their land. Their Valley Resort project collapsed. I didn't get a huge payout. After the legal fees and settling all the fraudulent debts, I was left with the farm free and clear, and enough money to finish the most critical repairs. But I had never been in it for the money. The real victory was standing on my own front porch, the one George and I had built, and looking out over the fields, knowing that they were safe. Knowing that I was home. It's been 5 years now. The farmhouse is no longer sagging. It's strong, painted a cheerful yellow, with a garden full of flowers and vegetables out front. The barn roof is whole, and instead of pigeons, it houses a few chickens and a grumpy old goat named Atticus. I started a small organic farm, selling my produce at the local market. It's a hard life, but it's a good one. It's an honest one. Mr. Davies comes to visit sometimes. He brings his grandkids, and they help me pick tomatoes. He told me once that our case reminded him of why he became a lawyer in the first place. He looks happier, lighter, than he did in his 14th floor office. I never found a picture of my grandmother. There wasn't a single one in the house. I think perhaps she didn't want me to remember a face. She wanted me to remember her spirit. And I do. I feel it all around me. In the stubborn resilience of this old house. In the kindness of my neighbors. In the quiet strength I found in myself. My inheritance wasn't the collapsing buildings or the overgrown land. It wasn't even the evidence in the safe. My real inheritance was a choice. The choice to turn around and walk away, or the choice to stay and fight. The choice to accept the story I was given, or the choice to uncover the truth and write my own. I chose to stay. I chose to fight. And I chose to build a life on the foundation of love and sacrifice that my grandmother left for me. That is a legacy worth more than all the money in the world. And so I want to leave you with this. What we are left is not always what we inherit. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we have to dig for. The ones we have to fight for. Home isn't just a place you are given. It's a place you create. It's the community you build. It's the purpose you find when you decide to stand for something. Thank you for listening to my story. It means the world to me to be able to share it. If any part of this touched you, if you've ever had to fight for your own truth or your own place in the world, please share your experience in the comments. Let's make this a place where those stories are honored. And if you want to hear more stories about finding strength in unexpected places, please subscribe and join our community. You are not alone.